All right, so you know how sometimes something seems like it should be really simple, but then when you actually get into it, there's all this nuance?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Happens all the time.
Well, that's exactly what happened when we started digging into this software testing stuff you sent over. You know, initially I thought, okay, a bug's a bug, you find it, you fix it. But it turns out there's this whole system for deciding which bugs to fix first, and it's not just about how bad the bug
Right,
is.
right. It's way more interesting than that.
Exactly. And the thing that really jumped out at me was this whole idea of severity versus priority. Like how critical a bug is for the software isn't always the same as how urgently it needs fixing, which I found super interesting.
It's a really crucial distinction. Yeah, and it's not just for software people either. I think anybody who's ever had to deal with, like a to-do list where everything feels important can probably relate to this idea of figuring out, like, what needs to happen right now versus what can maybe wait a little bit.
For sure. For sure. So let's dive into this, this whole severity versus priority thing. What exactly do we mean when we talk about the severity of a bug?
So severity really boils down to how much a bug impacts how the software works. Like, is it just a tiny little visual glitch, or is it like a full-on system crash? Does the thing still kind of work, or is it totally broken?
Okay, so it's about how badly the software is actually affected by the bug. Gotcha. And who usually gets to decide how severe a bug is?
Usually the QA engineer, so the quality assurance engineer, makes the call on severity. I mean, they're the ones who are like really down the weeds with the code and stuff, so they can see how much damage a bug is really doing.
Right, they're the experts. So how do they actually categorize the severity? Like, are there like levels or something?
Yeah, yeah, totally. The material you sent actually breaks it down into 5 different levels.
Levels. All right, hit me with them.
Okay, so the most extreme level is critical. This is like a 5-alarm fire situation. The whole system just shuts down completely. Nothing works. Like, imagine you're trying to buy something online and you get to the checkout and the whole website just crashes. Total disaster.
Oh, yeah, I've been there. Not fun. So critical is a complete shutdown. What's next?
Okay, next up is major.
Hmm.
Um, this is still pretty bad. The system might not completely crash, but it's like really messed up. Big chunks of it might not be working right, but there might still be some parts that are sort of functional, limping along.
Okay, so critical is like the whole building's on fire, and major is like, okay, maybe one wing is on fire, but the rest of it is like smoky and people are panicking. All right, got it. So what about the less intense levels?
Right, right. So then we've got moderate. This is where things start to get a little less apocalyptic. With moderate severity, the system's still working overall, but there's something definitely not right. Maybe a specific feature is glitching out or some of the data is displaying wrong, but you can usually still use the software for like its main purpose.
Right, like it's not ideal, but you can still kind of get things done. Okay, and what about minor?
Minor is pretty straightforward. It's basically like a small problem that doesn't really mess up the main functionality of the software. Like
Hmm.
maybe there's a weird visual glitch somewhere or a button's in the wrong place, but it's not like a huge deal.
Right, so kind of annoying, but not a deal breaker.
Okay, and I think there was one more level,
Oh,
right?
yeah, you're right. There's also cosmetic.
Cosmetic, yeah. So I'm guessing that's all about how the software looks, right?
Exactly, like typos, alignment issues, things like that. Stuff that doesn't actually affect how the software works at all, but it might look a little unprofessional.
Okay, makes sense. So we've got our 5 levels of severity, from total meltdown to a little bit of messy makeup. But now let's get into the priority side of things. How is that different from severity?
So with severity, we're talking about like the impact of the bug. With priority, it's all about when that bug needs to be fixed. You know, like is it something that needs to be addressed right now or can it wait until later? So it's not just about how bad the bug is, it's about how quickly we need to deal with it
Exactly.
and who usually makes the call on priority.
Usually the manager or the client has a lot of say in priority
Yeah.
because, they're thinking about the big picture, like what's most important for the business and the customers.
Right, right. So they're thinking about like deadlines and budgets and what features are most important to users.
Exactly. And just like with severity, there are different levels of priority. But instead of 5, there are usually just 3.
Three. Okay, walk me through those.
So we've got low priority, which is basically for those bugs that are like kind of annoying, but not a huge deal. They can be fixed later when there's more time.
Okay, so low priority is like, yeah, we'll get to it eventually. What about medium?
Medium priority bugs are the ones that should be fixed, like during the normal development process.
Yeah.
They're not urgent, but they shouldn't be ignored either.
Right, right. So they're on the to-do list, but not at the very top. And then, of course, we've got high priority.
Yeah, high priority bugs are the ones that need to be fixed, like ASAP. They're causing serious problems, and the software can't really be used properly until they're fixed.
Okay, so high priority sounds a lot like high severity. Is there really a difference?
There is, and it's important. You can totally have a high severity bug that's actually low priority. Or you could have a low severity bug that's high priority.
Okay, my brain's starting to hurt a little. Can you give me some examples?
Sure, sure. Let's say there's a bug on a website where the company logo is displayed wrong. So, like, the logo's messed up, but the website still works perfectly fine.
Right, so it's not stopping anyone from using the site.
Exactly. So the severity is low,
Mm,
but the priority is high because, you don't want your website to be out there with a messed up logo, right? It looks bad for the company.
totally, yeah. So that's a low severity, high priority situation. What about the other way around?
Okay, so imagine there's a bug in the flight booking system on an airline's website. So people can't book flights, which is obviously a huge problem, high severity for sure.
Oh, yeah, that's a major issue.
But let's say the airline is about to launch a whole new website anyway, with a completely new booking system.
Mm-hmm.
So they might decide to just wait and fix the bug in the new website rather than trying to patch up the old one.
Right, because fixing the old website is just going to be a temporary solution anyway.
Exactly. So even though the bug is super severe, the priority might be low because they've got a better solution coming soon.
Okay, that makes sense. So basically, severity and priority can be totally different depending on the situation.
Yeah, and the material you sent actually has a really helpful table that lays out all the key differences.
Oh, yeah, the table. That's super useful. So one of the main differences is that severity is about how much the bug impacts the software's functionality, while priority is about when it needs to be fixed, which is more about scheduling.
Yep, exactly. Severity is about whether the software is working right, and priority is about when we need to fix it.
And the source also points out that severity is usually decided by someone with technical expertise, like the QA engineer, while priority is often decided by someone thinking about the bigger picture, like the manager or the client.
Right, because the manager or client is thinking about things like, will this bug affect our sales? Or will customers get angry if we don't fix this right away? Things like that.
Yeah, they're thinking about the business impact, not just the technical stuff.
Totally.
And that actually reminds me of another point from the source. It says that priority can be kind of subjective, while severity is more objective.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Like, the severity of a bug is usually pretty clear-cut. Either the software crashes or it doesn't. But the priority can depend on a lot of different factors.
Right, like what else is going on with the project or what the client's priorities are.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about how severity and priority are different, but the source also gives some tips on how to actually figure out the severity of a bug, right?
Yeah, it does.
And one of the things it mentions is that even a minor bug can actually be pretty severe if it happens a lot.
Right? Like, if there's a bug that only happens like 1 out of every 100 times you use a feature, it might not be a big deal. But if it happens every time, then it becomes a much bigger problem.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like if the door to your house only gets stuck once in a while, it's not a huge deal. But if it gets stuck every time you try to leave, then it's a problem.
Exactly. And another tip from the source is to really try to isolate the bug.
Yeah.
Like, figure out exactly what's causing it and what parts of the software are affected.
So basically, the more you understand about the bug, the better you can assess how severe it is.
Exactly.
Okay, so now we know how to identify and categorize bugs. But what happens when there are like tons of bugs and not enough time or people to fix them all?
That's where defect triage comes in. It's basically a process for deciding which bugs to fix first and who should fix them.
So it's like a bug fixing battle plan.
Pretty much.
And the source actually outlines the steps involved in defect triage. Right.
Yeah. It starts with reviewing all the reported bugs. Then the team figures out how severe and how high priority each bug is. Then they decide when to fix each bug and who should be responsible for fixing it.
Okay, so it's a pretty thorough process.
Yeah, it has to be. You don't want to accidentally miss a really critical bug just because it got lost in the shuffle.
Right, right. So all of this is obviously super important for software testers. But why should anyone else care about this whole severity versus priority thing?
Well, I think it's helpful for anyone who's ever worked on a project where there are a lot of things that need to get done, but not enough time or resources to do them all. Like how do you decide what to focus on first?
That's true. Like, we all have to-do lists that are longer than we'd like them to be.
Exactly. And thinking about things in terms of severity and priority can help you figure out what's actually most important and what can maybe wait a little while.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's about prioritizing, right?
Exactly.
So, to recap, what are the key takeaways here?
Well, the big one is that severity and priority are different, and it's important to understand the difference. Severity is about how much a bug impacts the software, while priority is about how quickly it needs to be fixed.
Right, so severity is about the what, and priority is about the when.
Exactly. And the source makes it clear that getting this wrong can really mess things up. If you assign the wrong severity to a bug, it can throw off the whole development process.
Yeah, and it can lead to a lot of wasted time and effort.
Totally.
So, here's a thought for you, listener. Think about a system you use regularly, like a website or an app, or even something like your car. Can you think of a potential issue that might be high severity but low priority, or vice versa? What factors do you think would influence that decision? It's something to ponder. Anyway, thanks for joining us for this deep dive,
Thanks for having me.
and we'll see you next time.
See you then.